Athletic Brewing Company is reimagining beer for the modern active adult. Their great tasting athletic craft brews let you enjoy the refreshing taste of craft beer without the alcohol or the hangover. You can enjoy them anytime, anywhere, and still be healthy, active, and at your best. And when AB won North American Brewer of the Year at the International Beer Challenge, the judges were shocked to find out it was alcohol-free. I mean, seriously? Buzz-free beer that is better than the rest? And to top it all off, as part of Athletic Brewing, Two for the Trails program, 2% of all their sales are donated to causes and organizations that support healthy, outdoor, active living through park and trail cleanup and maintenance. Whether you've decided to cut alcohol out of your life for good, for a night, or just one drink, Athletic Brewing Company provides an option without compromises that you're guaranteed to enjoy. To try their award-winning non-alcoholic beers, go to athleticbrewing.com. Use the code PNF20. You'll save 20% off your first order. There is free shipping on orders of 2 6-packs or more, or you can use their store finder to find it on shelves near you. Athletic Brewing. Brew without compromise. This segment is brought to you by Jig Masters. Step up your game with high-quality performance jigs, spinner baits, buzz baits, and more from jigmasters.com. And always, when in doubt, get the jig out.
You're listening to Bass Fishing for Noobs on the Paddle and Fin podcast with your hosts Ryan Milford and Sean Lavery. Welcome back to Bass Fishing for Noobs on the Paddle and Fin podcast. I'm Ryan. We got Sean.
What's up,
here.
guys? What's up? What's up?
And it's just us tonight. No guest. Yeah, so it was brought up in our Paddle and Fin group chat of a kind of beginning kayak or what I need, that sort of thing. And we've done episodes like that in the past, but it's been over a year, so we thought it'd be a good idea to revisit that right there. And so this episode is just going to be intro to kayak fishing, what you need, what I don't know, probably go over some stuff that people say you need that maybe you don't necessarily need, and all that good stuff. How you doing tonight, Sean?
Not too bad. Not too bad. I'm glad it's kind of the end of the week. I'm looking forward to taking it easy a little bit. I don't think I'm going to have too much fishing since it's just getting downright cold out there. And
what's the temp out there?
What is it right now? It is
like what on average. Like, what's your days been like?
Today was a high of 36. So. Tomorrow is going to be a high of 32. Sunday's 36, but then Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday of next week we have snow. So,
awesome.
Yeah. Well, except for then the water is going to freeze over, and I'm definitely not going to be able to get out kayaking at all. So,
we got 40s and 50s every day. Monday's a high of 62, but thunderstorms. So
okay. I actually been out. I went out the last 3 weekends, even though it's been pretty cold. And but now I saw a couple people posted videos from the lake that were the guy was busting through a layer of ice with his trolling motor, and I'm like, that's gonna start getting a little hairy. So
yeah, and
the river wasn't frozen, but that'll probably take a while. But
that's always kind of. I don't know, made me question it. Like, I've seen videos of people like breaking through ice with their kayak.
I've seen Brad Hicks do that, so
I mean, that's got to take a hole of your kayak.
You would think so, but I guess it depends how thick it is. If it's just like a thin layer on top, maybe. But and I know they say the river doesn't freeze quite as fast as because it's moving and everything, but it also was flowing pretty good I actually went out on the river the last time I went out, and I was definitely tired when I got back because it was moving pretty good. So,
All right, well, let's get into this.
so
I guess first things first, if you're going to get into kayak fishing, you got to have a kayak. So, how long you been kayaking now?
2017 is when I bought my first kayak,
Okay.
and I started with Wilderness Systems Tarpon 100. And I know they say don't buy your second kayak. No, wait, what's the saying?
Buy your second kayak first.
First, yeah, and I definitely probably didn't do that because I only had that tarpon for about maybe 6 months before I was like, I need something more stable and bigger. And then I went and test paddled the Kusa HD and loved it, so I jumped ship and got that. But at this point, I don't want to say whatever gets you out on the water initially. I know that goes against the buy your second kayak first, but what'd you start out in?
I started out in a Pelican Challenger 100. It was like I think new is like $250. My buddy bought it, had it like a month. He's like 6'4", big dude. So he was really too big for it. So I bought it off of him. But yeah, I started in that. I had it, I think, close to a year, and then I upgraded to a Vibe Sea Ghost before I got my Bite FD. But I'm, to be honest, and people are gonna have different opinions, but I've never been a fan of the buy your second kayak first thing because when when you're just getting into kayaking, you don't know what you need in a kayak.
Right.
There's so many different brands out there with so many different features that you I mean, some people might go into it knowing what kind of bodies of water that they're going to want to put it on. Some people, like me, I didn't know, and I've explored different bodies of water. Now I feel like my kayak's a good kind of all around kayak. It's a pedal drive. I can take it out on lakes and smaller ponds and stuff like that. I can also take it on the river because my drive, it's Jackson. It's got the kick up drive. So if I get in shallow water and I smack a rock or something, it just pushes it up inside the hole. It's not going to damage my drive or anything like that. And it paddles decent.
I was
So
really surprised how well mine paddled too, but
yeah, so I'm not really a fan, like I was saying, of the second kayak first. I feel like buying a somewhat cheaper kayak. I wouldn't recommend one like what I had because my back killed me in that thing, and it wasn't the most stable thing. So I recommend if you can find something used that's in the 500 range, something like that. I feel like that's a good starter. It's something with a metal frame seat that is going to give you better back support because when you're out there for a while, man, back support is for me at least that's really important. If you have any type of back problems at all, it's going to be really important to you. For taller guys, I'm 6 foot. That might be a big reason why my back hurts so bad in that first kayak because the backrest didn't go up very far. A shorter person, they do because it's going higher up on their back for them, where for me it's not going very high up at all. So that could have been part of the issue as well.
right.
But yeah, something decent that is going to let you kind of get the feel for it, and then it's like from then you can kind of figure out, what, I think a pedal drive would be good for me, or I think I need to keep paddling. Some people prefer to paddle. Um, uh, I like an open deck space, or I like a center console, or there's all kinds of different designs out there that you can pick from.
Right. And I think along with that, one thing I would definitely super highly recommend is go out and test paddle boats. I did not do that with my first one. Had I done
Yes.
that, I probably might not have bought that one. I bought my first one from Austin Kayak online, and if I had to do that over again, I would have went and test paddled as many different boats as I could. A, because it's fun. B, because it definitely, when you can, especially if you can take a couple different ones out right one after the other, you can really feel the difference between them, and kind of compare apples to apples at that point. And you'll be able to feel. I remember that I test paddled the Kusa with the pedal drive in it, and I really did not like the tracking on it. I felt like I had to constantly keep my hand on the rudder control, whereas on my Hobie, I don't always have to do that. So it definitely, and I wouldn't have known that had I not test paddled it. So definitely, if you can now. My Hobie, I actually had to drive 3.5 hours to test paddle because the closest place to me that had it was Delaware from PA. So that I could find a test paddle, but definitely, especially if you're going to spend that kind of money, you want to probably test paddle it before you commit to buying it if you can. So,
Yeah, definitely. And another thing kind of added on to that is, if you get involved in some of these like Facebook groups for kayak fishing, your local clubs and all that, there there's generally so many people that are willing to try out a certain kayak. They have it, be like, yeah, let's go out and and let you pedal it, whatever. And so you can try it and see if you think that that's so that's another option there is, just get in these groups and start communicating with people and you know, see if they'll let you try out some of their kayaks. That's mainly if you can't find a dealer that has, has the kayak that you think you might be interested in as a demo. That
right,
could be an option there.
right,
Uh, but yeah, I don't want to throw out too many like specific recommendations for a first kayak because it's gonna vary, but it's part of it's gonna vary by area because certain areas of the country, some brands are more popular than others, some are harder to get. Um, so I don't really want to throw that. I know, well, yeah, so not really specific, but the main thing I'm gonna say again is a metal frame seat that's going to give you back support. That's to me is the biggest thing when you're first getting into it.
right, right. I had I bought after I had my Kusa, I actually bought one off a guy at work. He was just selling. He was an older gentleman, and he couldn't get in and out of it. He had a loon, which is a sit-in, an Old Town sit-in, and I bought it just because it was cheap, and I was like, hey, if I can have a second kayak that way, if I have a buddy who wants to go out with me, but uh, there was good and bad things about that. It was really hard to get in and out of, and for him especially, he was an older guy that didn't have, his knees were bad, and he's like, I just can't get in and out of it. But I remember one time I took it out, and uh, the one ramp that I get in and out of has a restaurant near it that has weddings a lot, and so there's this wedding going on at the restaurant. So I paddled up to the ramp as quiet as I could, and I tried to get out, and I totally fell and splashed. And I felt like everybody at the wedding turned and looked, and I was like, "Oh gosh," But but that only had the seat was kind of on the floor of the kayak, and I just didn't really like even paddling it because I felt like I had to have my arms up so high to kind of get around. Plus, it did have rod holders, but it just wasn't very good for fishing. So it was the angler version of the loon, but so yeah, again, but there might be people out there who are like, oh man, sit-in's great. That's for me. So just make sure you try out, different kinds and just put some thought into it. Where you're going to be fishing, go talk to people who fish where you're going to be fishing, and they might be able to save you some time too, and say, oh, I tried that, and give you some good reasons why, one kayak may work better than the other. But again, you also have to, think what works for you might be different than what works for somebody else. So just have an open mind, do some research, and yeah.
And something that you said that kind of made me think of another point about like the rod holders. There's some kayaks that are made for kayak fishing. There's some kayaks made just for getting out on a kayak. So I do recommend finding one that's a fishing kayak. Most fishing kayaks have built-in rod holders. They have areas for storage. I've got a buddy that he went out and bought like the cheapest kayak he could, and it's a little sit inside, but it had like no storage, and he's a DIY kind of guy anyway, so he rigged this thing up the best he could where he could all this, but it looked really ghetto and it still kind of looked sketchy and everything. He eventually bought a different kayak that was actually a fishing kayak. So just go ahead and get one that's a fishing kayak and not just a leisure kayak.
And one other thing too that I would think of would be safety too. If all you can afford is the cheapest Pelican at your local sporting goods store, by all means, if that's what gets you out on the water, do it. But just keep in mind that those boats are cheaper for a reason. They don't have air pocket or anything in the hull to trap air. So if you get water in there, it's going to fill up and you're going to go down. And if you hit a rock with it, it's not going to hold up as well as some of the higher end, not thicker kayaks. Like in the Susquehanna, there's huge rocks, and I hit them all the time because it's just the way that it goes when you're floating down with the current. And if you're fishing and not paying attention, you turn around and you're coming right up on a rock, and sometimes you just kind of smack into them. Some kayaks aren't going to hold up to that. And if that's, the kind of area you're going to be fishing in, you want to make sure you keep that in mind versus if I'm out on the lake, there's no current, the worst thing I'm going to do is the wind is going to blow me into shore and I might, bump the shore a little bit. That's a little different than being on a river, especially with some kind of current and big rocks like that. So you want to look at the safety aspect of it too. And keep that in mind when you're picking your kayaks.
Absolutely, that's a very good point. Like a lot of these cheaper kayaks, like you were saying, it's really thin. I know my first kayak at the boat ramp, I drug it on the concrete a lot, and I almost like uh, drug a hole in it from that, just from dragging on the kayak. But for that reason, I drag like I try to drag my kayak as much as I can. E- sorry, with a better quality kayak now, I still try not to drag it, but, because of that. It scared me. But and another thing to look at is with these cheaper kayaks, they're not going to be as stable. Most of them you're not going to be able to stand in. A lot of like my first one, you had to hold upright. If you lean just a little bit too much, that thing was going to tip. I never flipped it, thankfully, but it easily could have been done.
Right. And if you, especially some of those cheaper kayaks, if you just take a look at the hull, you'll see that most of them are just one big, kind of shaped hull. It doesn't have the kind of W shape. I can't remember what the term for that is, but that's where you get your kind of stability. And if it's just one big hull, like I said, yeah, it's going to be much easier to lean one way and go over. So Yep, definitely keep that in mind. There again, and that kind of comes down to test paddle it if you can, so you can kind of see, and don't be afraid, wear clothes that you can go in it with, because that was definitely something I tested the second time when I actually test paddled. I was leaning as far as I could and kind of feel where the tipping point was. Some boats are amazingly stable and hard to tip. Like I remember being in the Bonafide uh, when I test paddled that, and that was hard for me to get on edge. My Kusa was really good. I test that same time when I test paddled my Kusa, I also test paddled a big rig, and a Mayfly, and both of those were also super uh, wide, super stable. I don't know. You'd almost have to try pretty hard to get one of those to roll over, but.
All right. Well, I think we covered the kayak part pretty well. So, Sean, what's the second thing you should look at?
I'm going to say PFD.
I would agree.
You could go say paddle, because you're probably going to need one of those too, but I'm going to say PFD just because I don't ever paddle without mine. Too many things can happen. I've heard and seen too many crazy stories, and heard of people just the only reason why they're still here is because they were wearing one. Um, so along with that, I would say, maybe look to spend a little bit more on that, because if it's a cheap one that's not comfortable, you're probably not going to want to wear it, and that's not good either. So of course I have the Chinook, which is a very popular one.
Yeah,
So
it's probably the most popular. I have the same one, same
and
color and all.
this is bulkier than some. I know some people prefer the air bladder ones. They're a little more expensive, I think, but to me, I don't trust that it's always going to go off if I need it to. I've heard times of those going off when you don't want them to, and also times when they didn't go off when they should have. So this is guaranteed to keep you up pretty much, whether you're conscious or not. Hopefully it's going to keep you, at least your head out of the water, and keep you floating, no matter what happens. So I'd say, if you can, and you have a little bit budget left over, definitely look into a half decent PFD. Now the Chinook is pretty expensive. There's definitely some in a mid range that are going to be, comfortable. I think with my first kayak, I got like a package, and it came with a Stolquist one that was pretty comfortable. And I still have it. I just prefer the Chinook a little bit over it, but
Yeah, to something you said, if you got enough, you said if you got enough budget left over, I would almost say make sure you leave enough budget for a good PFD. Um, I was like a lot of people when I first started. I didn't wear it. Um, I, there were some sketchy situations that thinking back now, I'm like, man, I could have died, or so, um, and there's so many scenarios you don't think about, and then because it's like, oh, I can swim. What do I need this for? It's only 5 foot of water. I can stand above it. What do I need? Well, if you smack your head on a rock and you're unconscious, it don't matter how good you can swim or how tall you are.
right. And if you're on the river and a boat runs over you, over your kayak, you never know what's going to happen. And you can't just take your ability into account. You have to, include the stupidity of other people. So
Yep.
unfortunately,
And,
that's, the way it is.
if you fall in and get wrapped up in your fishing line, it's hard to move when you're wrapped up. There's so many. One story that I remember hearing. I don't remember who it was. I believe it was just on like the kayak bass fishing Facebook page or something. But they said that they somehow got their hook stuck in them, and they tried to pull it out. And when they went to pull it out, the pain was so much they passed out. and they woke up floating next to their kayak in the water. Had no idea. They didn't know how long they'd been out or anything. Got over to the bank, passed out again, and it's like, you know, he could have been out for 5 seconds. He could have been out for 30 minutes. You don't know, and you know he could have possibly drowned if he didn't have his PFD on. So it's stuff like that. Like, you know, we're all human. You know, as awesome and amazing as we like to think we are, we're still very vulnerable uh, to stuff like that. So please wear your PFD.
Yeah.
The first one that I got that I wore was like a $30 life jacket from. I got it from Academy. It was Onyx, and you know it wasn't bad comfort wise. It had a lot more um, fabric than the Chinook, which made it a little hotter. You know, it covered more. Where the Chinook, you know, the sides are pretty well open, allow more airflow. You know, it was covered on the sides and stuff, so you know it's a little bit hotter. So you know, it does the job. It wasn't like I said, it wasn't terrible as far as comfort goes. It was just summertime, got pretty hot. But you know, it did its job for $30.
Right.
I've got the Nook now. You know, I'd say it's more comfortable. You know, more breathable. The pocket layout is better on it. I use my life jacket as a utility. You know, all the pockets keep all kinds of stuff on it. I've got my boomerang line clips. You know, on there. I keep my phone in there. I
You can see everything. I mean, I got the knife. That's not a necessity, but it's nice to know it's right there if I need it. My line cutters are right here. I have my whistle. That's one thing safety wise. You always want to have a whistle. I think it's actually a legal thing, isn't it? Certain places.
Yeah,
I want to say
I know down here in Tennessee you have to have one.
I think so. In PA, it's the same way. So, you know, and then you can see all these other pockets. I got other stuff in them. I have my lure retriever in this one, and I'm trying to think of anything else I have in here. But generally, that's pretty much what I carry on me. And then I usually stash my phone in one of those pockets too. So, but yeah, it's definitely, and that thing is, you know, once I put it on, you know, it's comfortable enough that I don't think about it that I'm wearing it, you know, but rarely am I like, oh, you know, this just isn't comfortable. So definitely.
It's a thing too.
Go ahead.
Sorry, you froze up on me there for a minute, so I wasn't trying to interrupt you. But I was gonna say that's the thing too is once you get used to wearing it, you know, it's not a big deal. Like you don't even notice it. You do notice if you don't have it on though.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
It's almost it's like a seat belt. You know, I remember when I was younger, first started driving, I didn't want to wear a seat belt. You know, it wasn't cool to wear a seat belt and be safe. I wanted to drive around. It felt weird to wear it. So now, you know, I'm married, got kids. You know, I got people that depend on me. So, you know, I wear my
Right.
seatbelt, and you know, I'm so used to wearing it. It don't bother me, but it does feel weird if I don't put it on. Like I notice it. I'm like, I need to put this on. So it's the same way with the PFD. Like once you get used to wearing it, it's just another one of those things that don't bother you. It don't affect you.
Right. Like 2 Saturdays ago, I drove the whole way to the lake. Well, it's not far from me. It's 15, 20 minutes. Got there, unloaded my kayak, started putting everything in it. And I'm like, I forgot my PFD. I was like, and it was cold. I mean, it wasn't quite as cold as it is now. It was probably mid 40s, but I was like, I could probably be all right going out without it. But I didn't. I called my wife. I was like, I called in a favor and I was like, hey, would you mind taking a quick drive and running that down to me? And I just fished from the shore till she got there and gave me my PFD. But it definitely. I don't know that I would ever go out without it. I don't know that I would. At the end of the day, you want to come home. We all want to have fun. That's the whole point of this. But you also want to come home, and if that's what makes that happen or makes it possible, then it's definitely something you should have always. So.
Yeah, and another thing that I feel like we should say here, like as far as your situation, especially this time of year when it's cold, you we I want you to wear it all year whenever you're out. Um, but when it's cold, that's probably one of the most important times because when you hit that water, man, you look up videos on YouTube of people, you know, jumping into frigid water and doing these tests and stuff. Your body, like, I don't know, it don't want to move. You don't have control of it. So even if you are conscious, it's hard to swim. And so that PFD, gonna keep you from going under whenever your muscles are contracting and you can't control your arms and all that. So definitely at least wear it this time of year. I mean, I want you, like I said, wear it year round, but this time of year is very important.
Absolutely.
Um, touch a little more on the inflatables. I'm not sure how I feel about the inflatables. I've heard the same story as you were talking about that you've heard where, uh, well, I've actually seen back when I first started kayaking, I went out with a bunch of buddies. None of us wore PFDs because I didn't wear them back then. Stupid. But one of them had an inflatable and just had it in the back of his kayak, and I guess some water hit it, and we're just paddling along, and all of a sudden, poof! And it went off in the back of his kayak. Um, so I've seen them go off when not intended, and I've heard a lot of stories about them not going off whenever they need to. Fortunately, I I will say I've never heard a story of someone losing their life because it didn't go off. Personally, I haven't heard a story like that. I don't know if there has been any or not. One PFD that me personally, some people like them. I do not recommend is the plate PFDs because if you flip out and hit your head with a normal PFD, it's going to hold you up. With auto inflate, hopefully it goes off like it's supposed to. It's going to hold you up. With a manual inflate, you hit your head, you can't pull that cord to make it go off. I do not advise a manual inflate.
Same with the belt ones. Did you ever see the ones where it's just kind of a belt?
Yeah,
That's not going to keep your head out of the water. It might keep you afloat and save you some strength of having to. Right.
Yeah.
If you want your butt to float, I guess that's what you do. But but I remember we got when we were out down at Indian River fishing for flounder. We got pulled over by the DNR just to check the fish lengths, and I noticed that the Coast Guard guy, was wearing a Mustang inflatable. And I asked him about that. I was surprised because I'm like, I would think you guys would be wearing, an actual PFD, not an inflatable. And he's like, well, this is kind of a top of the line inflatable. But that when I saw that, and initially I never had thought I would even try one. But after I saw the Coast Guard guy wearing them, I'm like, okay, maybe, if you spend some money and get a nice one, they're probably, worthwhile. But obviously,
Yeah,
I went and looked at the model he had, and it was pretty expensive. So,
the state probably paid for his.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely wouldn't go cheap if I was going to do auto inflate. I believe NRS recently came out with the auto inflate. NRS is known to most kayaking as a good quality brand. So if I was gonna do it, it'd probably be NRS, just because I know
Right.
that brand
Yeah.
and I know they're trusted. But yeah, that's just me.
Same here. Mine would either be a Mustang or a NRS because both of those brands I trust. So
All right, so we need to cover anything else on PFD or
just wear it. That's the number one rule.
that's right. Where's Dan Perry at?
That's right.
So paddles. Did you start out with the cheap paddle?
Again, mine came as the package, so
Okay.
I think I have it's heavier, but it's a good paddle. It's not. It wasn't the Ozark Trail $20 one. It was, I think when I looked up the value of it, it was probably like a $100 paddle. It's not bending branches. It's not. I don't. It is an angler version. It has like the hook keeper. It's still the paddle I use. Even my Hobie, the Outback came with a paddle, and I prefer the paddle I had over it. So at some point, I am gonna upgrade. But I'm still paddling with that paddle. So
Yeah, see, my first kayak, I had a cheap Magellan. I don't even know how you pronounce it, but it's like a $30 or $35 paddle, and it does the trick. I'm not gonna hate on the cheap paddles. They'll move the kayak, but yeah, I've said this before on here, but when we had our Dale Hollow trip in 2019, we were out there and I was with Josh, and he was in a pedal drive, so he let me use his paddle, which he's got a nicer paddle. I forget, it's a Bending Branches. I think it's like the Angler Pro or something like that.
mhm.
One of the nicer ones, and he let me use that, and there was a night and day difference between these paddles. Paddling a mile with that cheaper paddle is like you're tired by the time you get uh, done with that mile. Man, I feel like I could paddle for a while with that better paddle. So this is going to be very budget depending on the person. So I'm going to say after you get your kayak, after you spend a decent amount on a quality PFD, what do you have left? Get the best paddle you can for, at that point. Now, I I personally use like a mid-range paddle now. I've got the Bending Branches Classic, and now have the new Yak Gadget paddle.
I just saw that. That surprised me when you posted about that. I never heard that they had a paddle, so that's cool.
They just came out with it like last week, and yeah, so I haven't got to try it yet, but looking forward to that. Um, what length do you use?
Mine is a telescoping. It has a
Okay,
telescoping ferrule, so I
well, where
can.
do you use it at? Generally?
I'm trying to think. I want to say at like 250, so longer than some, but yeah.
It well, see your length for anybody newer to kayaking. Your length is dependent on the width of your kayak, your height. There's several different factors go into what length you need. You know, Sean is how tall are you, Sean?
5'7".
5'7".
Yep,
Sean's 5'7", what, 170 pounds somewhere.
a little later, but yeah, ballpark. Yep.
Uh, well, I'm 6 foot and 260, and so I'm. I'd say, I mean, we didn't measure it or nothing, but I'd say I sit up a little higher in the kayak than Sean does, and so there's a further distance from my arms to the water than Sean's arms to the water. So I'm probably going to need a little bit longer paddle than him. I'm actually surprised you used 250. I would have thought it would have been a little shorter.
Well, only because I noticed when I have it shorter that I was hitting the side of my kayak. So
that's when you don't.
Yep, I was just going to say I encourage any of our listeners who are looking for a good. If you go back last week, Josh and Brad just talked to a gentleman from Bending Branches, I think, and they had a good discussion on choosing the right paddle. You can't just go by, that when I first started looking at paddles, they had like this thing in the store where you just put your, stand up straight, wrap your fingers over the top, and that'll tell you the length of it. That might work for very specific applications, but there's so much more that goes into that. And the width of your kayak, how tall, whether you're going to have your seat in the high or low position, if you have an adjustable seat like that, what your paddling style is. I remember Brad and Josh were talking about, Josh was saying that he kind of tends to be a more vertical, has a more vertical stroke to his paddling stroke. So, he's going in more right next to the kayak versus out a little bit. So definitely give that episode a listen to, because I think it's a really good discussion on, how to kind of try and find the right size paddle. And that's why, I got really lucky with mine, because it is a telescoping, so I could play around with it and kind of, really fine tune it to where I want it to be. I actually looked it up. It's actually the AT Paddles Pursuit Angler. That's the paddle that I have and still use. It's the one that came with my very first kayak, and it's 150 on Austin Kayak. So it is probably a mid-range paddle too, but it's worked well for me. And having that adjustable ferrule really, gave me the best of all the worlds, because I didn't have to guess on my paddle length for the most part. I could put it, fine tune it where I wanted it.
Right. Yeah, and I almost got an adjustable paddle whenever I upgraded, but I didn't. I ended up getting that Bending Branches Classic. It's a 260, and a world of difference just right there. It's not as light as one like Josh has, the Angler Pro. But that length makes so much of a difference, because, like you said, with my cheap paddle, and that's one thing with cheap paddles is I don't know of any of them that come in like longer lengths, like 230 max.
Right.
And that's what I had. I believe it was a 230 centimeter, and and I would hit my kayak. There were times where I'd go to paddle, and like the paddle would come up out of the water, and it's like I was just trying to sling water on the person behind me is what it looked like. But it was because my paddle's too short. I got that 260. I don't have that problem. I don't smack my kayak. I don't barely get in the water. And yeah, the Yak Gadget one, right now he's only got a 250. I feel like they're going to come out with more sizes eventually, but like I said, they just dropped this. But right now it's a 250, so it's a little bit shorter than what I'm used to. But I don't paddle a whole lot now since I got the pedal drive, so not too terribly worried about it. I'm interested in trying it out, but it's got the little lure retrieving hook in it too.
I will say that I wish mine didn't have that, because my line gets caught on that when I have it, if I'm pedaling, or if I've had it catch more times in it than I might have used it to actually get my line off of something maybe 2 times, and I bet you I've caught my line on it probably 100 times, easy. To the point where now I try, and when I put it on my paddle holder, next to next to me, I spin it so that it is down, so that my line isn't as likely to catch on it. But it drives me bonkers. I almost wish it wasn't there.
Let's see. I disagree with you there. One, I don't use my paddle a whole lot. Once I get away from the bank, I put it up, and don't really use it a whole lot until I'm coming back in. Um, but I believe the little notch is in the back whenever I put it on my holder. So
Okay.
I haven't had a lot of issues with it catching that, but it has saved me
Really?
much. I've had rods fall in the water, like in like 4 or 5 feet of water, and been able to stick that down there and catch my line with that little cutout and pull my rod back up.
Okay.
I've got caught in trees.
So that's
Like,
the two, maybe 2 or 3 times I've used it has been when my stuff is in a tree.
yeah, and you just hook on to the lure with it and yank it down.
Hmm.
I've used that. I've never really used it for what I always thought it was for, which is lure retrieving in the water.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I like having it personally. I guess that's a preference thing as well.
Yeah. And again, it might just be, that I haven't used it as often as I should have, but I just feel like it's just one more thing I end up getting snagged on for whatever reason. And it always seems like I'm like, it's such a small thing that you would think it would just pass over, but somehow half the time my line just finds its way in there. I'm like, what the heck?
uh, but yeah, as far as paddles go, I don't know if there's too much more we can really touch on that isn't better covered or already covered in the episode that Brad and Josh did. So I'd say for more paddle reference on what you should need, go listen to the episode that Sean was referring to. It's going to give you better detail from people that are smarter about that kind of stuff than us.
I almost want to go on there and chat with Benny Branch's rep just to see what they would consider the best paddle for me. Just because he was saying that they do that, and I was like, that sounds like a really good idea. Because even though I do paddle a lot too, uh, it is on my upgrade list of things I'd like to do, and you know the way they talked, you get it and it will last. If you buy a good one, even though it's more expensive, if you buy a good one, it's going to last for you and be like something, you'll just be able to keep using over and over. So that is on my wish list for sure.
All right.
All right. So we have a kayak, we have a PFD, we have a paddle. What do you think's next?
I mean, you're going to need a fishing rod, but I don't really want to go into that too much. If you're experienced fishing, you already have that. You already know what you want or need. If you're not, I'm going to say just don't go super cheap. Get a decent combo.
What would you say is like minimum you wouldn't spend on a combo?
Minimum I would spend on a combo or
No,
minimum
just to
recommend.
get started. You think $50, a $50 combo
Yeah,
would be?
yeah, I'd say $50 would be fine getting started. That way you got something decent, but you ain't got a ton invested into it if you end up deciding it ain't for you. Um, but yeah, I'd say that.
Right.
Um, did you have a crate right away?
Yeah, just a plain old milk crate that we had laying around the house. And I think I took some PVC, cut it down, and made my own rod holders, zip tied them to the back of the crate. Um, and I rocked that for quite a while, until I upgraded to that crate bag that I had for a long time. But yeah, at first it was just a milk crate. So
Yeah. I didn't have one at first, like with my cheaper kayak, because I didn't feel comfortable turning around and trying to dig in a crate because it wasn't very stable. I made my own once I got my Sea Ghost, and same thing, milk crate, and yeah, I actually took a second milk crate, cut the bottom off of it, and made a lid for my milk crate, and yeah, got a little latch on it, and PVC, made rod holders out of it, zip tied them on. You know, DIY crates like that, they're gonna do you fine.
Yep. Yeah. And as you use it too, you'll find out what you do like and what you don't like, and be able to go on from there. And there's tons of crate options out there. So, but yeah, if you're just getting started, heck, even if you don't want to take a crate, just take like a backpack or something, something that you can just throw in the tank well, or in the, if you have front storage that you can, just something that, you can get you out on the water and you give you a spot to store a few things. So,
Yeah, my buddy for the longest time he bought this backpack type thing at Walmart that came with like the little clear tackle boxes.
mhm.
It's got a spot for that. It's got a spot where you can put your soft plastics. It's got a spot for tools and stuff. It's really, really kind of cool. Like I'd almost be interested in one of those just for like, bank fishing, but I don't do a whole lot of bank fishing. But it'd be cool for that, like just keep in the truck if you ever want to go and bank fish. You just grab that and throw it on your back and go. But he used that for a while, and it did him pretty good. Uh, but yet, if you're like with fishing, at first you might just have like a couple lures that you take with you, but eventually you're going to have more stuff. You're definitely going to want some sort of crate to store it all. um, one not only to be more organized, but like and I would definitely recommend putting some sort of lid on it, because one of my favorite parts about a crate is the security. I flipped my kayak once. I had that lid. I didn't lose all my deck. I lost a box that I had laying out on my kayak, but nothing that was in my kayak,
Right.
um, or in my crate. So I definitely recommend a crate with a lid for that reason.
Yeah, if you can. Yeah, it's going to keep it dry. For the most part, if it rains, depending on the type of lid. If it's just a crate
Mine's
cut on. Okay, but yeah, keep that in mind, because it's not a matter of if you're going to flip. More than likely, it's going to be when. So, if it's going to keep it in there, then that's probably something. I actually had a zippered kind of. Mine came, the crate bag I used for a long time was actually like a bag. It literally, the crate sat down inside of it, and the top zippered onto it. That was a pain getting in and out of, but it was also dry for the most part, unless I was lazy and left it hanging open.
Yeah, that concept
But
sounds.
yeah, and it served me well. It's what I used right up until I got my Yak Gadget crate from Santa. So I have been loving that, though.
You liking that Yak Gadget crate?
Absolutely, it's amazing. So it's super easy. It holds a ton of stuff. My super long box, or my 3700 boxes, and it's angled, so I don't have to try and reach over and in. I can kind of just reach back, and it's been pretty cool.
You got the bigger one, right?
I actually chatted with them before I asked the wife to buy it, and just said, "Hey, will this fit in the tank well of a Hobie Outback?" And they're like, "Absolutely." So I was like, "All right, that's the one I'm getting." So and it fits fine. It's easy. So
Storage space in there.
yeah, tons. And you can mount rod holders right to it. I saw that Dan Perry had that set up, so I kind of modded it a little bit. I put mine on the side, and so I have the 3 on the back that stand straight up, but then the ones on the side I angled so that I can have a little bit more horizontal rod storage.
Dan's setup is awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's like goals right there.
Yeah. But that's one thing I wish that Hobie had, would be like horizontal rod storage on the kayak. Like, the PAs have, where you can have a couple rods on either side of you, just flat on the bottom. And that's one thing, that really wish I had. And I'm still looking for a good way to do that on the Outback, but that's the next best thing, being able to at least have them at a place where I can kind of set the angle of them and have my rods not straight up in the air. Because I've broken so many rod tips getting caught under trees and stuff. It's, just I needed a better way.
See, when I did my DIY crate, I did not want my rods sticking up. For the tree thing, getting caught in trees, one thing. Another big thing is I like to overhand cast, and I've caught rods going back to cast before, and don't want to do that again. So I actually set my rod holders up, the rod holders that I made on my DIY crate. I set them up to be horizontal, so they just stick straight out the back of the kayak, and this did me pretty well. I did. There was one day we got out there really windy, and one got blown out of it. Still crazy to me how it came out the way it did. But because I got it set up pretty well to keep them from falling out, or if they do fall, should catch them pretty well. But I guess it was just so windy that day, it blew it out. It fell out, and I didn't notice till afterwards, so I wasn't able to recover that rod. But other than that, haven't had any issues out of it. It's been great. I can go right up under trees. So if you're gonna make your own crate, that's something to consider.
Yeah.
Are curious about my design with those rod holders, shoot me a message on Facebook or something. I'll send you a picture, show you how I cut them out.
Yeah, definitely. If you're just getting into this, before you go and spend money on a crazy crate, just YouTube crates or Google it and just see crate DIY and just look at the options that are out there. You can do a ton of stuff just getting started until 100% it's something you want to start investing more of your money into. There's a million and one do-it-yourself things for kayaks out there, so just and Google's your friend. uh, you'll just hop on the internet, do some quick searching, and just look at what's out there. You're going to be able to save a ton of money just when you're getting started. Now, obviously, as you move down the road, there might be things that you want to do or try, and at that point, awesome, go spend the money. But if you're just getting started, don't fall into the trap that you got to spend a ton of money on the biggest crate and with the most rod holders and all that too. So I think that's definitely good advice.
Yeah. All right, so we got kayak, BFD, paddle, touched a little bit on rod for beginning fishermen, crate.
What else is a necessity?
I I don't know. I can't think of anything else that you like really need when you're first starting out. I feel like that's enough to worry with when you're first getting into it.
How about things you might not need?
Oh yeah,
How
we
about
did.
an anchor? What's your thoughts on the anchor?
I
Do you
I
carry
don't.
an anchor with you?
It depends. If I'm going out on the river, I like to have one. I've got it rigged up on Anchor Wizard, um, coming off the front of my kayak because a lot of time I'm going out alone and I'm pedaling upstream and then I float back. So when I'm pedaling upstream, I get to, if I'm wanting to sit in current or something and fish in that current, I'll drop it and it's going off the front of the kayak. So it sits there and holds me in that current facing upstream so I can sit there and cast. Um, Other than that, I generally don't carry an anchor. Um, I don't, I personally don't see a lot of need for it other than in a river. Which I personally, if you're going to do a lot of offshore fishing on lakes and stuff, I could possibly see where that'd be come in handy. But if you're newer kayaker and a new fisherman, you're probably going to stay close to the bank, beat the bank a lot. You're going to be moving a lot as it is. I don't really see much of a need for an anchor for a newer kayaker.
I agree with you. I also have an Anchor Wizard. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with that thing though, because I cannot get it half the time. When I get it loose, I do it too much, and I, then have to go home, take it off, tighten it back up again. I've started to get a little better at that, but I struggle with it at times. But when it works great. I just that was one of the first things I bought for my first kayak was an anchor, and I went out and had an anchor trolley put on, and I didn't know what I was doing. I never used that anchor trolley on my first kayak, and I had one on my Kusa, and I did use it on my Kusa, but not enough. So when I got my Outback, I didn't even have one put on because I don't feel like I used it enough to necessitate it. So when I look back at all the money I spent on things that I never used, it's kind of frustrating. So, definitely keep it simple until, you know what kind of fishing you're going to do the most of. You'll figure out what you need and what you don't. If you don't feel like you have to go and buy everything, I definitely wasted a ton of money on different things that I didn't need. So, trying to think of what else I bought that I didn't need.
We didn't really talk about a net. Do you feel like you need a net when you're first starting out?
I would say no. Again, especially if you're starting with a smaller kayak, you're not going to have the space for it. Especially, I have just upgraded my net too, so I have a half decent sized net now. This is the I'm trying to think of what the make of that is. What is it?
So I feel like it starts with a G.
True Last or Neverlast? Is that it? Everlast. I think that's it. And this is actually their G3. It's actually Yak Net. It's
G right then.
Yes. So that one's the Yak Net. That one just came out too. That one has a little bit of a telescoping handle, so it's nice. But up until that, for the first I've been fishing since 2017 until just now, I had a little trout net that was big enough to hold a half decent sized bass or catfish, but the handle was broken off on it, it worked. I usually kept it under my seat until I needed it, and that worked pretty well for me. So, but I don't know that I necessarily need it. It definitely comes in handy, and if you catch that PB, you're going to want to have something you can put under it if you're bringing it in the boat and you look down and see you only got one hook in it on your treble hook. It definitely is peace of mind. But do you need it? Absolutely, probably not.
I'm gonna agree with you and disagree with you at the same time. Like you brought up a great point. It's if you're in a cheaper kayak, you might not have the room for a net. But if you do, I recommend having one. You don't have to go spend a bunch of money on a net. I used one for the longest time that was like $13 off Amazon, and it did great up until I caught a big old drum and it bent. We used it afterwards, but it bent it pretty well with a big drum. But uh, well,
You still there? Did I lose you? I think we may have lost Ryan, ladies and gentlemen. See if give this a little bit and see if he comes back online. That's a great frozen shot for those of you on YouTube. He looks very happy. Let's see if he comes back online. There you are. Welcome back.
yeah, I don't know that was me or what, but because I lost both of us there.
Okay.
But
So you say if you have the space, get one, a net.
yeah, I definitely feel like it makes it easier to land fish in a kayak, especially when you get the motion right. Um, but yeah, don't go crazy on one.
But and really, I was looking at the Yak Attack, the leverage nets, and they're expensive. That net that I got is I think $25. So you can get a really nice net for pretty cheap. I think Academy has the G2s for 20. So don't feel like if you're going to spend, just look around because there might be this net floats, my other net didn't float, so I was constantly worried about dropping it or losing it. So yeah, just do a little research. There's another I think Brad and Armando did a show on nets, if I remember, and Jimmy. So go back and listen to that, and you can hear them give the pros and cons of some of those other nets. So. I think I lost Ryan again. I wonder if it's me or him. Now he looks, very thought-provoking. This is going to be a good fodder for the YouTube crowd, if we leave this in there. See if he comes back. But yeah, definitely keep a lookout. Do your homework for the nets. There's a ton of options out there. But you don't necessarily need the biggest, and especially if you have a smaller kayak, you're not going to want the biggest net you can get. We'll let Ryan's hopping back in. Now he's back.
Yeah, so we're having some technical difficulties tonight. We might want to just go ahead and wrap this up here before they get too bad and we end up losing an episode again.
Yep.
But I definitely feel like this is open to a part two of a little more to get a little more advanced,
right?
Things you may need or may not need.
Agreed.
But yeah, it's been fun, just me and you.
Yeah.
Hear our beautiful voices a little more.
I feel like I don't have to do, just nod as much.
People actually get to hear you talk on this episode.
That's right. All right, guys. Well, I hope, for those true noobs that are listening or watching on YouTube, I hope that helps you guys out as far as, some do's and don'ts and things to look for. And if you're just getting started, and we'll definitely hit this topic up again, a little bit more in depth for some of the other things that might not be necessities, but, are definitely good to have. I know I wanted to talk about measuring boards and stuff if you're looking into getting into tournament fishing or anything, but so there's some things you definitely need for that. But we can cover that later.
Part two.
Yep. So thank you guys for listening. And this has been the Bass Fishing for Noobs segment on the Paddle and Fin podcast, where we bring you the techniques, the tricks, and the tips to help you rip more lips. Thank you guys, and have a good evening.
Later, y'all. There we go.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode on Paddle and Fin. Don't forget to go check out our website at paddle, the letter N, and fin.com. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel at Paddle and Fin. If you got a question, comment, want to hear from a future guest on a future episode, feel free to email us at paddle, the letter N, and fin at gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paddle and Fin on Facebook and Instagram. Shout out to our show supporters, Angler. The Angler button and app just makes for a better time on the water and creates a virtual logbook for every fishing outing out on the water. Shout out to Rocktown Adventures, located in northern Illinois, for all your kayaking, camping, and hiking needs. Shout out to Jigmasters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com